Camera number 2. There we go. Episode number 2 of MarineDeals Gear Up and Go. We are talking topwater tactics with Tristan. If you guys haven't met Tristan yet, he has been with MarineDeals now for what? 5 years,
yeah,
Tristan?
Yeah,
Bloody long time.
Yeah.
And Tristan he's kind of developed himself as our resident topwater expert. Tristan, tell us some things about your fishing.
Things about my fishing?
About your fishing. You haven't always been into topwater, have you?
No, not really. I actually got a freshwater background.
Yep.
Back in I'm from South Africa, obviously. I always actually tell customers they come in and they want to talk about, topwater and stuff. They're always like, oh yeah, you chase kings? And I'm like, yeah, man. Kings is pretty much the reason why I stayed for so long chasing kings, and it's the best place on the planet, arguably, to chase them. They get the biggest. Every single world record's held. Every line class is held here in New Zealand, and it's the best place and awesome species to target on topwater gear. So kind of fell head deep down that rabbit hole and, kind of looked at people that were doing it really consistently and well. Yeah. Started asking the question on how, and then went and practiced it. And most of that stuff that I've learned along the way, we're going to discuss. Yeah. So it's going to be pretty good today, yeah.
Sweet. We've got a pile of stuff to get through.
Pile of stuff, yeah. It's quite a lot to narrow down into everything and, try to share the experience and what I've learned along the way.
For sure. We're going to get started. We'll get started in the gear, eh?
Yep. Yeah.
Start with, I don't know, where do you even start? The rods and the reels? The rods probably first?
You can do rods. Yeah.
So when we're talking about topwater rods, so most of your fishing is stick baiting rather than popper fishing, right?
That's correct. Yeah. So poppers for stick baits. A lot of the industry with rod building is catered to GTs, chasing GTs, which works well, but it's mainly poppers. So your P8, P10. So PU rating is pretty much your length. Your strength of your rod. In the diameter of the line. So a lot of what we're going to talk today is going to be PU rating. There's lots of charts and stuff if they want to search that up. But it's mainly catered for popping. And then there's a select few, usually your P6 to P8 is kind of for your stick baiting range. So that's a good place to be,
Yeah. Sweet. So when we're looking at stick baiting rods, what are we looking for? What are we looking at?
Pretty much something that's got a nice backbone. I generally, with customers that come into the shop, I kind of steer them towards something that's going to sweep the lure quite well. So we want a relatively good soft tip, and mainly out in the Gulf, you're looking at a P6, which is a good little combo. And I always emphasize on having a nice balance set. So if you're going to run P6 line, it's all got to be in balance with the lures that you want to run. So P6 rod's a great place to start because you've got a casting range of about 85 grams up to 120 with stick baits. You can pop, but like you said, like in New Zealand, popping kind of attracts the fish really well. I always say if you want to stitch up a mate, you can give him a popper and then let him pop, raise the fish, and then you can pretty much slow pitch the stick bait to it and then hook up quite well. So yeah. P6, and then generally you want to run that rod on like anywhere from a 10,000 to a 14,000 size reel. Yeah. Good solid drag, at least 15 kilos. You don't have to break the budget or the bank, but obviously you got your flagship reels from Dawa, which would be the Saltiga, Shimano, which is the Stella, but you've also got a step down in that. So there's the Twin Power, Circo, all those are pretty good. And the key thing to always remember when you're looking at buying a combo is that if you're not casting, you're not fishing. So you want to try get away with the lightest combo that you can handle, that you can cast all day and just pepper out those casts because quantity will equal more fish. And then yet still have something strong enough to pull them in. So generally P6 to 8 is kind of the middle ground, 8-foot rod. And then you've got the heavier versions, which is your P8 to P10, which is kind of, more of the popper range. And then lighter version, which is kind of specialized, which is your P4s, and they're a little bit shorter. So P6 is a good place to start, and then just pair that up with a 10,000, even from an 8,000 up to a 14,000 size reel. Yep. And then make sure that your line matches your rod, and then it matches everything else for your lures that will kind of break down in a little bit further.
So talking about line matching your rod, we're pretty much just fishing braid for topwater.
Oh yeah, 100%. You need braid. There are people that do catch fish on mono. And there's a couple of customers that come in and they say, hey, man, like I've caught a couple, but it's just a couple versus a lot. You just want, as soon as you sweep it like that, the braid has zero stretch, and it's much better. It gives you better sensitivity, and it gets the lure swimming quite well. As soon as whatever you do here, it reflects on that side nicely. And then, so starting from the reel, just to cover it again, anything from 8 to 14,000, make sure it's nice and balanced. P6 is a good place to go. Some rod mentionings you could go for, like, obviously Shimano's got their flagship range, which is the Oshia. They've got a brand new limited. Kuma Katora, your pen prevails. That's pretty good. Dawa have their Saltiga range as well, and a couple of others, the Saltist and the... that's pretty good.
Huge range of rod on
massive
the
range of rods and reels, but that's why it's very hard to be specific. But P6 with the 10, 14,000, it's pretty good. Try avoid the big stuff like P8s, 20,000 size reels. You're just gonna,
unless you're heading up to like big fish territory and
wear yourself
tropical islands or that kind of stuff.
If you're gonna do the tropics, even if you want to chase GTs, you can still get away with a 14,000. That's more than enough grunt.
Sweet. And then on the end of our braid, we obviously have a leader. What
leader wise, I enjoy running Veravas.
Yep.
And then again, this is kind of that combination of making sure that it's nice and there we go. Make sure it's in there, nice and balanced. So if you're running P6, 100 pounds good. You can step it up to 130, so 100 pound off the boat, which is more than enough usually. 130 off the rocks just for that extra little bit of abrasion. I usually fish solo, so I learned that the hard way, losing many a big fish.
Now, that's a mono shock leader, right?
It is a mono shock leader, yes.
Yeah.
So that's just to allow a little bit of, give in your system, because you got all this stuff. You got a very stiff rod for, your stick baiting when obviously when you're hooked up and fighting the fish. So you need something as soon as the kings, they explode. That's why we love topwater fishing. They just come up and hit it really hard. So you want a little bit of give, a little bit of stretch. If you use fluorocarbon, you can get away with it because of the abrasion resistance, but the knot, whenever you put a kink in fluorocarbon, it has memory. So that's not ideal when you're tying a knot. So mono's that good, nice in between points, especially Veravas. Gives you good knot strength, and then it doesn't like fracture when the fish hit it real hard.
Sweet.
Yeah, and then your connection knot's just the FG. So you've got your braid coming off onto the FG knot, and then you can run it down to. Should we just go through the whole?
Yeah. Process, well, what else have we got gear wise? Stick baits and
gear wise in a hole. For you've got your combo. You'd need that. Casting gloves really help because. Once you start peppering those casts, it gets a little bit hectic on your finger. So casting gloves, good pair of split ring pliers. You can pretty much see all the kit that I have here. Chuck that in there. So gimbal for fighting the fish. Nice pair of split ring pliers. Shimano do a really good one that goes from size 4 all the way up to size 10s. So it's really good. Casting gloves and then split rings, really important. A good swivel because you'd attach it to pretty much the stick bait. If I roll over this way, I can show you. Change it over. So you can pretty much see this is going to be your leader material, and then I generally use just an AG chain, and then it's doubled over with just to give it double braking strain onto a Pacula swivel. And again, all of this needs to be nice and balanced. We can sit here and talk for quite some time.
Yeah.
Split ring, and then that allows you to use your split ring pliers just to change out your stick bait. And then, BKK singles, some split rings, but we can jump into that a little bit better.
Yeah. So while we're looking at that, in terms of hooks, you're pretty much always running singles over trebles?
Myself personally, yes. There's a lot of people that love using trebles. I call them terrible trebles. Purely because I mainly release most of my fish, as you know. So it has, there's pros and cons to each. So there's the idea behind trebles causing drag. So when you're sweeping your lure, it causes drag and allows it to swim better. It's got nothing to do with drag, it's just weight. So the weight of your lures, every single stick bait will have a recommended weight that you need to use for your hooks. So like most of the stuff that I use is a good alternative is the SJ hooks. I don't know if that's on there. Yep. And I run it as a Baker rig. So the Baker rig was made, I think it's Travis Baker. Might be wrong with that quote, but yeah, he's off of Nomad. And he came up with, so you run it back to back. I've got a stick boat over here, some hooks. And that just helps you get up to your weight that you're needing. So it's a good treble alternative. Reason why I don't like trebles, number one, you're casting a stick boat all day. If you make a mistake, you get a treble in you. It's really terrible to get out, and they're all crushed barbs. The back-to-back Baker is really good because it still allows you to be pretty sticky. So generally if you chase GTs, I'll use a Baker rig and not singles, but and they're much stronger.
Yeah.
So a treble's got 3 weak points, whereas a single, as soon as you hook up to the fish, you've got a good solid connection. It's usually in the corner of the mouth, so you can go real hard, real quick without any worries.
So single hook's probably much better for the fish as well. If you're
way better for the fish if you want to release it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I always say that barbs, I mean, the only thing they're there for is if they get in your hand, it ruins your fishing trip. And number two, it just makes it super easy to slide out the fish, as long as you keep tension.
Yeah.
That's all sweet. But with stick baits, it's all about balance. Everything about balance. Your split rings that you'd run, they have a certain weight that they add to the lure, so you want it to be nice and balanced and pretty much sitting how it should be in the water. And then by adjusting your two hooks, whether it be the back or the front, it gets you, it reduces the way that the stick bait swings out a little bit better, makes the back end of the stick bait a bit loose. But generally, you just want to match it up quite nicely. This is a Maria, you can see that, and then over here I've got a Carpenter, and I run Kodoku single assist on. Reason being is it's a little bit heavier.
Yep.
So they weigh 9.4 grams plus the split ring, so it brings it up to 10 grams. And if you go on Carpenter's website, they recommend running about 9 to 10 grams.
Yeah. So what's the theory behind running the short assists rather than just the hook straight to... The
hook straight, it's purely because they're not inlines.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're more jigging hooks, so they've got a heavier gauge, so it's a little bit heavier, you know what I mean? It's pretty much with your hookup, you'll have the same hookup rate. A little bit better hookup rate, actually. Purely because it just allows a little bit more movement, so when the fish comes and hits it, he slides off the stick bait and then gets hooked up quite nicely. And over here you can see I've got a Kazu rigged up, one of my favourite lures. Baker rig, just with a little bit of tubing on there, just to keep it nice and together, and then a single at the back. And for people first setting up a stick bait, you want your hook to run towards the face, which is really useful. Most people, if you do it like that, you're going to have a less higher hookup rate. So you want that facing the front, and then the back hook, you want it facing up. So when you put them together like that, they kind of face away from one another.
Sweet.
So that's a nice little way to do it.
Cool.
With stick baits at least. And then just make sure that your... whatever rod you get, again, nice balanced combo. You'll see it written on the rod, 45 to 120 gram. As long as you cast within that range, that's pretty much how you'd select your stick baits. Yeah.
Sweet. Jumping back, something you just said before.
Yes.
Back to the gimbal. I noticed you use a pouch style gimbal rather than an actual, plastic belt.
Yeah, plastic plate.
Yeah.
I just like it because it's out of the way.
Yeah.
It's really, because most of the time when you shove a rod bloody in your crotch, it's just distributing that weight a little bit better.
Yeah.
So it's nice and easy, nice and convenient, and you don't fumble around trying to find, the big gimbal plate. So it's nice and chilled.
Yep. Cool.
It's also less stuff to hike in when you're land-based fishing, so it's nice and easy. Yeah.
Fair enough. And your gloves, are you going full-fingered gloves? Are you going cut-off fingers? Are you...
full-fingered gloves. It helps, obviously, when you're catching a fair bit of fish, the slime, so it gives you better grip. These are the Osher gloves. They're really good. They dry nice and quick. For a long time, I was on the market for decent casting gloves because they're either too heavy duty, and then when it's 27 degrees on a nice calm day, you get pretty hot. I am known to dress up quite flamboyantly with my buff and stuff. So
We've seen the
these
photos.
dry the quickest.
They dry the quickest.
They dry the quickest after testing, and they do pretty well. They hold up to the hammering of all the casts and all that good stuff. They jigging gloves though. On the website if you want to find those, so that's pretty good.
Sweet.
I think there was and then colours. We can dive into that a little bit. It's mainly the most important thing is your action. So,
So you reckon the action of the lure is more important than the color of it?
Is what gets the fish on hard days. So color, it's more contrast. So you want to contrast colors, nice bright shiny lures for bright days, dark lures for overcast days, which is mainly 80% of the time here in the Gulf. Yeah. So that's kind of covering that, but we can get further more into it as we progress.
Yeah.
Sweet. Little nuggets of knowledge.
So that's most of the gear, I think.
Rods,
reels,
gimbals, all your extras. Sunglasses.
Yeah,
extremely important. Your most valuable asset.
Yeah,
just to keep track of your lure. A lot of guys that go out and it's the first time fishing and they're casting away, they don't even realize that they've got 15 to 20 kilo king cruising behind their lure.
Yeah.
So
good polarized
sunglasses that you can keep an eye on your lure. That's another good bit of kit that kind of comes with it as a whole for everything.
Yeah,
makes it nice and easy. Yeah, make sure you can see your lure all the time.
Yeah, cool. You touched on it briefly as well.
Yep.
Knots. We get into rigging it up. So your knots. So your braid to leader connection.
Yes.
What are you running?
You can run 2 knots pretty much, PR knot if you want to use the PR bobbin. But if you do break off, that's quite a painful thing to do on the boat. So just a normal FG that you tie on. There's tons of videos. There's a really good video. You can just
tons of good videos on YouTube how to tie an FG knot.
How to tie an FG, but that would be the one that I'd recommend pretty much because it's nice and small. Guides through the guards quite nicely. And it gives you pretty much close to 100% strength to that. And then the AG chain, that just allows a little bit more give. So it works as a little bit of a bumper, a bit of a suspension when you're chasing the kings.
Here's a question for you that came through on Instagram when we asked for Topwater questions. Can I just run a snap swivel on the front of my lower so I can change them quick and easily rather than a standard swivel? Yeah,
snap swivels are going to be quite bulky. So when you're sweeping your lure, it's not going to loosen it up. So that when you run a split ring to the swivel, it allows for a lot more movement. So your lure, because pretty much when kings are chasing it, when it pauses, that's when they either hit it. So you want that nice and loose because they try to come into the front. They enjoy taking stuff head on. You could get away with it. I'm not going to say it's not going to work, but it's not as efficient or as effective. So it's much better, although it does cost a little bit more just to get solid pair of split ring pliers, and then it's way stronger. That connection is just easier. And the same thing if you use a split ring with split ring pliers, makes it just as quick and easy to exchange the stick baits. Compared to a snap swivel.
Kingfish are pretty renowned for being pretty tough fighting, so you want all that gear.
You want
good quality.
100%. You want something that's real nice.
Sweet. Okay, so that's most of, if not all of the gear covered. We need to go fishing.
Cool.
We need to. So how do we get out on the water? We should probably cover both boat and land-based fishing, right?
Yeah, that's good.
So we'll start with the boat. We get out on the water.
Mm-hmm.
What are we doing? How are we finding those fish?
Way before we...
Are you going to give us your spots?
Funny you say that. So I'll start it off. Well, we'll get closer to that. And I'll just have to remember. But preparation starts way before you're even on the water. I think that's the main secret, at least to consistency. So you're literally going to sit days before. Obviously, you're watching the forecast. You're seeing your tides. So you're going to research your tides. A good window that I could give is pretty much aim for a high tide of either 10 or a low tide of 10 because tides and moon phase coincide together. So that's pretty much leading up to the full moon, leading up to the new moon. You've got big tides, fish are hungry. So that's a good little point. And I always tell people that the window starts off really big and then it narrows down really quick as long as you take notes. But what you mentioned about spots, I feel like it's way more valuable trying to learn or teaching yourself how to find fish compared to focusing on a specific spot. I think it's way more valuable knowing how to find fish, and it doesn't matter what location you go to because it just makes it way easier. So preparation will start way before. You're going to look at whatever reef. Navionics is a beautiful app to do that. You're going to do a little bit of research, check the forecast, check the tides so that you know which way the water's running. And then that's pretty much directly correlated to how you're going to find those fish with the pressure face and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. So
days before
yeah.
you go. So it's when preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah.
And you get that all, you're all nice and educated instead of loading the boat, getting excited, heading out. Your mate told you, this rock's got some kingfish on it. You cruise up and you start casting. Nothing happens, and then it's like, oof. So just having an understanding of how kingfish move, how they sit, how they lay, and then you can start doing it a little bit better.
Yeah. So preparation.
Preparation.
Campbell mentioned this
man.
a lot in episode 1 of our podcast.
Yeah. Following that, you can go off. It doesn't matter what. If you want to fish for trout, you need to know where they're going to lay in the river, and likewise, when you're on the ocean, you need to know how your currents are moving, where they're pushing, where they're going. Yeah. And then just figure out how they're going to sit.
So we've done all our preparation. We've found our window. We get out on the water. What are we looking for?
There's 2 ways that you can split it. So my first option, which is the easiest and best for a lot of, if you want to have quick action, birds.
Yeah.
100% birds. You've got shearwaters and terns. I think you had a few.
Yeah, we'll chuck some photos of some
shearwaters and the terns. Yep. Definitely look for them, man. And especially if I've been off the water for a very long time, they're there every day. Yeah. They're doing it to survive, So shearwaters obviously chase specific bait fish. And then the kings are the ones that push them up, same as kawa. There's a couple of things, though, to look for. So oftentimes when people see birds that rush over, there can be times where it's just anchovy schools. So there's no predatory fish present. So a very good tip is to look for big splashes. If you see big splashes, 100% it's going to be kingfish within those birds. That's by far the easiest. If you come across birds, shearwaters and terns working the surface with big splashes, you can cruise on over. Most people, just boost straight over. Best thing is to try set yourself upwind of the workup that's working and try see which direction it's moving. Most of the time the kings will be on the exhaust end, pushing, chasing either the anchovies or your kawa, which are chasing the anchovies, and turn your motor off and drift onto them with nice big long casts. If you've got a nice combo, you'll send it perfectly through, and then work the edges of the workup, if you will, with the birds. So
terns and shearwaters rather than gannets?
Gannets you can, especially like now in winter, you'll have a couple of kings present. Even the little birds that hop along, I don't know really what their names are, but there's times...
Jesus birds.
Yeah, the Jesus birds. Yeah. But mainly I focus on shearwaters. Yep. Shearwaters, I always associate shearwaters with kingfish. And it's really, if you find them, even if they're just sitting on the ocean, 9 out of 10 times I'll just hang around them. They have a little bit of a break. It's obviously because of the tides, with the research that we've done just before. What time our high tide is. On slack tide, not much happens because it's kind of a reset, and it's kind of like a double-edged sword. A lot can happen because those bait fish have packed up onto the reef, and now they've got no... they're not like when a boxer backs himself up into a corner, there's no corner to back up into because now your current's gone. So that's one of the most productive times as well to fish. But they'll sit on the water and you'll see them put their head down. And what they're doing is they're actually listening. So if you ever see shearwaters sitting on the surface and they put their head down, all of them at once, and then they pop their heads back up and they fly off, they're going towards wherever those fish have culled them up and culled the bait up. So that's a great way to do it.
Yeah. Cool.
Way. Never debunk birds and shearwaters in particular.
So birds are the first way of finding fish. What's our second way?
Second way would be obviously using your sounder, so raising fish from a reef. Yep. So just before you've researched your tides, you know what that's going to do. With that, you'll know which way the current's going to push. You know what I mean? So incoming tide, outgoing tide. And if you've got a reef or spot that you want to fish, you'll pretty much want to be looking at the pressure face. So the pressure face is where the tide's heading and upwelling. There will be very strong pressure faces towards that 10 days before the new moon, 10 days before the full moon, and after. So that makes it really easy. So then what you'll do is you'll pull up to the your rock or your reef, and then start working your sounder. So you'll pretty much pop your sounder on, do a little bit of a zigzag across, working your way from close out.
Yep.
Keep an eye on your sounder. Obviously, you can go back and mark a couple of fish, And once you find that, you can set yourself up into a nice position and start casting your stick baits.
Yeah, sweet. So when you're using your sounder, are you looking for the bait sign, or are you looking for actual kingfish sign?
Actual kingfish arches. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can see that.
Yeah, we'll get those photos up on there as well, so you can see what
what it actually looks like. Yeah, so you'll see like it will be heavily stacked with nice big arches, and there can be bait present.
Yeah.
But you mainly just want to, even if, you know, most times you'll just see those arches and you start casting, you can raise fish, man.
Yeah.
You can raise fish, yeah. And there's no need to jig them up if you work your lure properly, and kingfish are extremely curious.
Yeah.
So if you take notes, as soon as you cast, you'll know if they're there or if they're not there, and then that's pretty much just time out on the water and time refining the craft of knowing how long you should waste time, you know, sweeping your lure at a reef, or move on to the next place where the kings might be turned on or off. Yeah.
Sweet.
But as mentioned before, if you're not casting, you're not fishing, so pepper it quite a bit.
Yep.
And then you should see them. You can raise them, you know, from quite a deep.
Sweet. So you mentioned that second way of finding fish, structure. Look for, you know, structure and current. You know, where you find bait, you find fish, right?
Yep.
Do you find that temperature makes any difference to kingfish being around a certain area or around at a certain time of the year?
Yeah, definitely. Mainly I speak of the Gulf. So in the Gulf you'll have, you know, from December you'll have plague proportions of smaller size kingfish up to about 80 centimeters. Then they pretty much, you know, reside in every single reef. Like any little bit of structure with a bit of current, doesn't matter, even a buoy, there'll be kings spotted on, you know. Because they are pelagic, they do shift and move, so obviously they move with the currents and tides. And again, if you take notes, you can narrow that window down quite well. And then you'll start off at one spot, find the fish, catch the fish. If that dies down, then you can move to the next spot, which fires up and goes crazy. As it progresses in, like, you know, autumn, as soon as autumn comes, most of the smaller fish kind of move out the Gulf, the schooling fish. I've always said, this is just my own you know, theory, is that the smaller fish will keep moving, and then you'll have those massive schools that grow together. So they'll come in the Gulf as like a little bit of a nursery. Pornites is another place that, you know, is a spawning ground for them. So they'll come in massive, you know, packs, schools, and then they stick together and grow together. And then they usually land up at, you know, your Ranfurly Bank, White Island, and then you've got, you know, huge schools of fish, but they 20 to 40 kilos, you know.
It's amazing how much kingfish move. I just saw a Facebook post the other day with a bunch of tagging research. I don't know who it was from. Maybe
Scott Tyndall. Yeah. So I tagged quite a few.
Fish that had moved from, you know, the Three Kings down to Mere or White Island.
Yep. So I reckon with the bigger fish, and then another thing, just on the topic of kingfish, they semi-pelagic. So when they first start out, they'll move as a school and move quite a bit. And as soon as they reach a specific size, they can take up residence. So those fish are the hardest to get, man, on stick baits. It's terrible. As soon as you have fish competing, it's really easy, and it can be a nice hot bite because they're going to lose out and they start competing against the lure, and then you'll, you know, hook up quite easy. But in those autumn and winter months, you usually have bigger fish because they've got a higher tolerance to cold. So way less, but bigger fish, really difficult to hook on a stick bait because there's no one to compete. You'll have maybe a solo fish or pack, and they'll come up and they'll just bop your stick bait and move on. So it's quite an achievement to get a decent fish. So you could say your season starts from September, like spring. You'll still have relatively, that's when you can catch, you know, over a meter fish. And then as it progresses, you can call it all the way until late April. So from September until April, that's kind of your main season. Peak being December, January, February, where you'll have plague proportions of.
In the Hauraki Gulf.
In the Hauraki Gulf.
Inshore waters, Yeah,
inshore.
Yeah. Sweet.
And likewise, I mean, if you use this, like I said, if you just figure out pressure faces, how to find the fish, how to spot the fish, if you go up to the Bay of Plenty, be the same. It kind of moves a little bit differently, and then, you know, obviously you've got the windowless north where you can get fish on stick baits. A good rule of thumb is for the top water bite to really kick off, it's the water temp needs to pass about 17 degrees, and then they're actively looking up. Really good.
Sweet. So we've talked about finding the fish when you're on the boat with birds and current and structure. When we're land-based fishing, what are we How are you finding spots to go
Land-based fishing.
land-based?
Generally, I'll jump onto Google Maps, Google Earth, zoom out quite a bit, and use that in conjunction with Navionics just to see depths. And if you've got like a headland, and then next minute you've got this, little piece that pops up, perfect place. So wherever you see current that's going to hit a path, so current, bait fish, and then that's pretty much, it's the same principle as under the water, but just on a land-based spectrum. So any headland that breaches out like this, that's got good current pushing past, that's a no-brainer. Yeah, the bait fish will pull into that, and then you'll start getting it. And then likewise with that, your window, because now you can't go and find the fish. Boat fishing, you can go find and look and search. Land-based fishing, you're stuck pretty much. Yeah. So you got to really just keep peppering those casts. And a lot of a nice good little tip that I find that helps quite well with land-based fishing, there's a clip that shows that, is a lot of, if you, depending on how the structure is set up underneath, that's where you'd find out with Navionics, how it works out. A lot of guys will cast out towards, but if you've got a sandbank there, usually bait and kings, the kings will push the bait up to your feet. So a good way is to actually cast along the shore and work your stick bait. Yep. So if you think about it, if a king's cruising along on a headland like this, you've got a very short bite window. You know what I mean? You've only got that little short sweep, and then your lure's out the water, and then you kind of pitch it and try get him. Whereas if you're casting along the shore, you've got such a much longer time for the king to notice your stick bait and then get him to commit quite quickly. So it's a nice little...
Sweet. So fish your feet first, basically.
Fish along your feet.
Along your feet.
Along your feet. And then if nothing happening, or if you've got a little bit of rock or something out, or if you, again, polarized shades, you see fish cruising along pretty deep, at least play with like your angles, you know what I mean? But if you're casting directly straight, you're restricting your bite time. But if you're casting at an angle, you can kind of reach out pretty far and then pull those fish in, or just pepper the actual...
Yeah. So when you're doing your scouting on your e-scouting, we'll call it, on Google Maps or whatever, are you looking for an area of coastline to go fish, or are you looking for one specific spot where you're going to go and cast all day?
You can do the area, but it's a little bit less efficient. Yeah. Trying to move, because most of the places are pretty remote, so they're quite tough and hard. And most of the time, if you look at the tides, you'll get cut off in a particular area. So it's just mainly a headland or any little bit of rock outcrop that pretty much breaks it, because that gives you a nice place where you know that the king's going to come in. Yeah. And likewise, if bait gets pushed into a bay, so sometimes the headland, if it's a very flat and you've got like that little rock outcrop, that's good. But if it's a little bit bent and there's a bay, most of the times that high tide in a bay, you'll have that bait fish get pushed into the bay. So that's also a nice way. Yeah. But again, if you're on a headland, you can cast back towards that bay, and then fish move. Yeah, so they'll cruise along the coastlines quite nicely. They'll come in and then move all the way through. So as long as you're at one place, you've got pretty good odds. And
land-based season, is it similar to what you were saying?
So before? On the rocks. When you're fishing on the rocks, this is, if you talk to a lot of people that are part of your groups, like game clubs, rock fishing game clubs, the season's winter to get really big fish. Yeah, so there's two things that pretty much happen: is fish go out deep, they go to deeper rocks, or you've got your resident fish, and then they also go closer to the coast. So summer, again, you'll have lots of small fish, lots of action, but if you want that quality fish, winter's the time. But stick baits, it's quite the task. Yeah, because you'll have that really big one solo fish that comes up and just we'll try to hit it. Yep. Cool. So same season, but obviously if you go up north, it varies and changes. Yeah. But it's always good. This is pretty much just like a guideline. So the best thing and the most valuable thing that I can say is just take notes. Yep. Take notes of your tide, time of the year, temperature if you can, wind direction, and then you can literally, when you start fishing, you'll start fishing maybe the whole day. Yep. And the more time you spend at that spot, the more you're going to refine it. Take notes more so of things that don't happen. Yep. Because then you're going to be like, sweet, don't even try then. And you narrow that window down really nicely to a point where you bang on the money. Sweet, if I go there, this tide, 2 hours of that side, 2 hours of this side. You know, there's action.
Yeah.
So this is generic, and then you refine it and get it a little bit better to your specific spot, because every single spot, doesn't matter where, what reef, coastline, it all changes with obviously with your tides. So
Cool. So that's pretty much finding the fish, isn't it? We've done our gear, we've done rigging it all up, and finding the fish. We just got to get it all put together. So we get out on the water, we found our fish. Casting techniques, is there specific techniques for
casting techniques? I see a lot of people push, if that makes sense. So you just want to lever it nicely, get like a good release. So that just comes with practice. You'll have lots of practice if you're getting into stick baiting with casting, because you'll just keep racking up those hours. You can cast from the side. One tip that I can give is try to do overhead casts, because if anything ties up in your guides, the lure is going to go spoop into the water instead of swinging around into your mate or swinging around into the back of your head.
Or snapping off and flying into
and
the
snapping
distance.
off. It's going to land here, not all the way down there that you have to go fetch it. So just put in nice long. Obviously the longer cast that you can get, the more exposure time you have with your stick bait swimming.
Remember those casting gloves?
Casting gloves, if you don't want your finger to be chewed. And then another thing is the length of leader that you run, you want to be holding the braid. So that's where it comes in.
That's what we didn't cover before. How long a leader are you running?
Pretty much you can do like a rod length, just a single rod length. So have your knot just above your finger so that there's a little bit of play. And then you're casting on the braid, and then just have it nice and comfortable. I measure it out to my rod and where I usually have my stick bait hanging, so I've got a nice leverage and cast, but it will change to each rod. But on an 8-foot rod, you would pretty much have like a rod length and a bit, and then make sure that your knot's above your finger when you cast it.
Sweet. Okay, cool. So we've got out there, casted our lure out.
Casted our lure either at fish or over a reef. That we've
so we've either seen fish or we're guessing.
We've seen fish, or we're taking an educated guess because of our preparation.
Working lures, specific lures have different
different actions. So like I mentioned just before, now we're getting into the good stuff, is action is paramount. It's the most important thing. The best lure that you can buy, value for money, is the one you swim the best. So practice. The thing is, conditions always change. Another good thing is you always want to, at least on the boat, try set yourself upstream. You know what I mean? So up current. Because it's going to, when you sweep a lure, it's going to allow it to dig in a little bit deeper, and there's going to be much more resistance.
So you're casting ahead of your drift.
Ahead of your drift.
Like soft baiting.
And then you're sweeping into the current. That way it makes it a much slower action, and you're going to be pulling much slower. Compared to if you run it with the tide, you're going to be doing a really quick, real quick retrieve. But once you cast out, the lure lands, pull up all your slack, and then it's pretty much a good way to start is try a retrieve. So start getting a constant wind, and then just do a figure 8 with your rod. That's the best bit, and keep it nice and low to the water. And then with your figure 8, naturally, if you just keep winding, you'll see that there'll be a bit of slack, and then on that slack, that's when you'll tug it, pull it, and then it'll kick down, kick up, kick down, kick up. And then, as you'll see in the video that we can run, it'll be so you want the lure pretty much to sit like that, and then dip down, do its swim, do its roll, pop back up. Dip down, swim, pull its roll, pop back up. The best way that I could put it is if you're watering the garden with a garden hose, and you do that little whip, that bit of slack, that's what you're sending back to your lure. And then if you watch your lure while you're sweeping it, as soon as you send that slack back when you're pulling forward, it will actually make the lure's head dip. And as it dips, that's when you pull it. So it's a little bit of an art, but it just takes time. And if you just pay attention to what you're doing, and you can refine it and make it. I
suppose those polarized sunglasses are going to help you keep an eye on that lure.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Because then the wind can pick up. So it's not it's not like one thing works all the time. So it's you should when you're learning that, don't get into the habit of just doing the same thing all the time. Change it up, and then likewise when you have a fish follow your lure, a bait fish doesn't just keep casually swimming like, hey, how you doing? To the kingfish. So you can double it up. That usually gets them to open their mouths and hit it quite hard, or you can literally stall it and then do a couple of kicks. So just keep it fun, keep it, entertaining. Don't let it get monotonous of just sweeping mindlessly, you know what I mean? Just cast and then sweep in and not pay attention to your lure. You want to try bring it to life. You want to try make the lure swim its best.
Yeah. So that's kind of doing figure eight sideways. So
a figure eight, yeah, like just a little infinity sign.
Yeah,
it's pretty good.
Oh, yeah. You look on YouTube and you see guys doing this. Is so many different techniques from walking the dog to just big long pulls and all sorts of stuff. You find that figure like kind of sideways figure eight technique is
sideways figure eight is a good way to get it, and then as you that's just going to get your timing nice with your constant winding, and then the figure eight, and then it's going to put that slack in the line, and then as you see that and what your lure does, you can refine it, and then eventually it's just going to be a straight pull like that, and then you're going to get that slack. The most important thing is the slack in the line. You can do walking the dog, that's pretty effective, but it doesn't cover much ground. There's tons of ways. So even a mixture, what I could recommend is using a mixture of walking the dog, maybe some really long sweeps, but just to get started, if I could explain it that way, it gets really good action out of the lure.
Sweet. Okay, so we've worked our lure. Fish has come up.
Worked our lure.
Hit it. Kingfish, where they hit it? Are they going to come around the front of a lure and hit it front on, or are they going to come from behind? And
they kind of, most of the time, if you're raising fish, you'll see in the footage there, they'll tail it, and then I'd say if you want to use like 6 out of 10, they'll come from the side. If it's really big fish, they're really good at like dolphining, like porpoising. If there's a pack, if you're watching your lure and you're sweeping it and it's getting closer and closer to you, you see little swirls, and then you're like, oh, then you know that something's, following your lure. Good polarized shades, you'll probably see the king. Change it up, and then they kind of commit and then just smack it. Big fish, they just come with one hell of a speed and just, you'll hear that, and then you're on. Yeah. So change it up when you've like hookups and follows. Another good tip that I could give or recommendation when it comes to that, try stay composed. So there's two things, and this kind of works out both with swimming your stick baits. The same pattern or rhythm that raised the fish is generally the one that will hook the fish. So if you see those swirls, try to compose yourself. It's extremely hard, but that's what makes topwater fishing so exciting for kingfish. And in particular, chasing kings, it's extremely difficult to get them to commit sometimes. So that's what makes them such a fun species to chase. Topwater fishing. Same rhythm that raised the fish is the one that can hook it. But if you're sweeping, you're still seeing those swirls, they're not committing, that's when you can change it up. But generally, so just keep sweeping most of the time, just stay composed, keep that same rhythm, keep it going. If nothing happens, change it up. Either do a little bit of a stall, then they'll hit it, or you can speed it up, so do like a double, and then they can commit to it. And oftentimes, people that I see first time stick baiting, they rip the stick bait out the fish's mouth. So completely ignore it. Always shout, ignore the fish, act like it's not there. And as soon as they're sweeping like that, when you sweep, that will be what hooks sets the hook. So just keep sweeping as if nothing's there, and then eventually, whoop, you'll come tight. You can do a wind, and then you can go into fighting the fish.
So you're not. So your sweeping action is actually setting the hook.
Yeah, you're not lifting the rod. Not
there's no strike.
There's no strike. You just pretty much do that, and then you can do like a couple of pumps just to make sure that the hook's set. But again, this is why I enjoy singles, because as soon as they hit it, they're on. And you know that they secure. So that's a good way to do it. And another good tip.
Razor sharp hooks. Yeah, cool.
Definitely use sharp hooks. Yes.
And then fighting the fish.
Fighting the fish.
They all do the same thing, do they?
Oh, no.
They all just swim the same direction?
Nah, definitely not. Yeah, if you talk nicely to them, you can get them to come up. I find talking nicely to the fish generally helps. Nah, not at all. Again, the first 20 seconds of hooking up to a kingfish, you'll determine if you're going to land it or not. So if you go too hard, kingfish, it's incredible. I'll bring back the IGFA records. 3 kg IGFA record, I think, is 31 kilos. So to do that on that fish, it's the polar opposite. The easier you go on them, the easier they're going to go on you. So if you hit them real hard, they're going to fight real hard. But then there's that catch-22, because if you go too easy and you're in shallow water, they're just going to take you to the reef. So it's that nice, beautiful mix which comes with experience. You're going to have to lose a couple of stick baits and, put it in the gimbal, keep your arms straight. That's one of the biggest things I see. Guys keep their, arms bent and then their rod's nice and high. That's putting a lot of strain on yourself. So if you keep your arms bent, keep your rod tip in the water, and then when they want to run, let them run, let your reel do all its work with its drag, let them go on. The longer you fight a kingfish, the more your chances are of actually successfully landing it. And in saying that, most of the time people get extremely excited. As soon as the boat's next to the boat, it gets lost.
Yep.
So as soon as that time progresses, you've got it. If you're fighting a fish for 2 minutes and there's no sharks are a whole other situation and scenario. But if he wants to run, let him run, and then just keep your arm straight, let the rod do its work, let it tire him out, and then do nice little pumps when you lean back, bring him in. As soon as he gets close to the boat, back off the drag completely. The battle's finished. As soon as you see a king close, they generally do 2 runs. The first run, which is ape shit, depending on how hard you go on them. That one's the biggest one, where you usually get taken to a reef or you get busted off. Second run's the one from the boat. So if you've been fighting that fish, tightening the drag, this is where hooks pull, this is where your line snaps, and you just want to be nice and chilled, let him run, back off the drag, let him do his tail slaps, and then, the battle's over. But in between, that's quite the fun.
And then obviously landing that fish, you're obviously releasing all of your kingfish where
that's
possible,
just myself,
right?
But I mean, for people that are going to keep it for feed, that's the perfect time. You can just wrap a leader, but don't do it hastily. You know what I mean? So as soon as the fish comes up, it's still got a lot of energy and it's just getting ready for that second run. They tighten up the drag, they grab the leader, and then hooks pull, things pop, all goes haywire. If you just back off the drag, let him do a nice run, come up, you can leader him, sink a gaff in. If you're releasing the fish, I know there's a lot of people that, do lip gaffs. Not for it, don't like it. If you look at a stick bait, it's pretty much a lip gaff, especially if you run singles. You can hold it like that. There's a couple of footage that we can play. Pull the fish in, grab it by the stick bait like that. If it's hooked on this, if it's hooked on there, it's even better. And then another reason why I like using singles, so you can pretty much leader the fish, grab the stick bait nice and secure, grab the tail, pick him up, and then care for kingfish when they come up on the up on the boat. Always try give them a nice big kingy hug. Try keep them nice and wet. Don't put them on the deck because then they smack their heads and stuff. They're quite very robust fish, but there is particular things like don't obviously keep your hands out the gills. Take a nice quick photo and then just spear them back. And if you want to tag them, you can tag them as well. That's always good, so we can know more and more. But
lots of people like what else have you got? A way sling as well, right?
So I've got the sling. So the sling is really useful. So I tend to, when I leader the fish, I've got the sling that I chuck in the water, and I pull the fish into it, close it, and then put my rod on. Get all my tagging gear ready which is from Scott. Scott Charitable Research, I think it is. Tyndall. Tyndall Research. There we go.
We'll put a link somewhere in the
if you want to get up and tagging fish. Chuck it in the sling. That keeps them nice and obviously wet, nice and chilled. Get all my tagging stuff ready. Make notes of the tags. Pull the fish up. Measure. Write it down. Pop a tag in. Lift it up. Take a photo. Hardest part of this whole process is probably the photos for myself because all solo. It's quite difficult to get a nice photo of the fish and then slip it back. And then on the opposite spectrum, if you're keeping it, sink a gaff. You want to bleed it out nicely. You definitely want to get rid of all that blood. Keeps the fish nice and good. And chuck it in a slurry of salt ice and nice salt slurry.
Getting it cooled down quickly.
Getting it cooled down real quick. So pretty much just get rid of the gills, let them bleed out. You can also cut the tail as well. In the chili bin, nice little slurry, and you've got your nice kingfish. But consider releasing them. They're quite a cool sport fish to have around. And the bigger ones, often get speared. No disrespect to spear fishermen, but it's awesome. But those big fish that we all like chasing, let's just consider gifting it for someone else to have the possible chance of.
Hard to release it with a spear throw it.
That's correct. You don't get tag and release spears,
but they're delicious.
Because those solo fish that cruise along, they're tough. They earn some respect.
Right, so that's it all pretty much put together. Casting, working lures,
hook up,
fighting the fish, looking after the fish once you've caught that fish. What else do we need to cover? I think I'm pretty much ready to go and attempt to catch some kingfish. Obviously, it's not the right time of the year yet. We have got there's a bunch of questions off Instagram. We can rattle through a few of those.
Yeah, that'd be good. Try my best.
Yeah. I think most of them, let's have a look, were fairly... They were all very similar questions, I think. Most of them were, what's a good stick bait to get started with?
Good stick bait that has a nice action. It's pretty much classed... we can pretty much go into depth now with stick baits. You've got two options, plastic and wooden. So a lot of guys say that... so in that category, best plastic lure that you can get, arguably, that swims really good straight out the box, is the Maria. That's unrigged, so you need to rig it up with split rings and singles. The 230mm takes a size 9 Diablo inline single. The smaller one takes a size 7. So just bear that in mind if you're going to get that. That's arguably the best action plastic lure. If you want one that's already rigged, but it's rigged with trebles, Rocket Dive from Shimano. It's got little weights in it. Easiest thing to swim. Catch is also really good, and they come rigged as well. So Catch, Maria, and the Shimano Rocket Dives. Those are goods to get started in with plastic lures.
A few of the Nomad ones go
Nomad as well. Yeah, that's good. And they come rigged as a baker rig.
Yeah,
straight out the packet. So that's awesome. They've got that little welded hook that's baker rigged.
The double hook.
Yeah, the double hook. Yeah. So that's really good. Those are all awesome, lures that you can use. Wooden lures. It's dangerous, man.
Yeah.
It's endless. You've got Kazu, Karamagima, Carpenter,
and you're talking
NACL.
They're talking money.
Yeah, we're talking money. There's no
some of those Carpenters are silly money, right?
Yeah. No, they set you back quite a bit.
House deposit.
Karamagima.
Sweet. So that's stick baits. Let's have a look. What other questions have we got here? Best mid-range rod and reel setup for Topwater Kings.
Mid-range would have to be, I personally say, put your money towards the rod, and then second best the reel, because you can it's more important to hook the fish than fighting the fish, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So probably the grappler, the S82 MH, which is the P6. And then you can pair that up with maybe a Spheros or a Saragossa, depending on your mid-range price point. But step down from that would be the Saragossa on a backbone. Your money's going more towards the reel than the backbone, and these are all the 50 to 80 pound. It's pretty good.
Yeah. There's a new, There's a new pen. I've got those new Slammer rods.
Slammer rods, they're awesome.
Slammer reels.
Slammer rods, Slammer reel, gain of 5,500. Akuma have the Katori, which is really good. Well, that's more their high-end stuff. They've got the tournament.
Yeah.
So it's endless, but yeah.
There's some really good rods and reels in
real
the
combos.
mid-range category.
Yeah. You can always jump on the phone or come see us in the shop if you want more advice than that. Yeah.
Cool, Tristan.
Yeah.
He's usually available.
Yeah, and we can work out if I'm not chasing kings.
Yeah. Let's have a look. What typically do you run for a setup doing Topwater? What's your go-to combo?
Go-to combo is the good old Stella 14,000.
Yeah,
that's what I run with P6 Osho casting braid.
That's the old Stella, right?
That is the old Stella, yes.
You haven't upgraded yet?
No. It's been doing me well. It's quite battered. And then we've got I run the Osho S82 MH, which is the P6 medium heavy.
Is that the new limited one or the full throttle?
That's the full throttle.
Yeah,
I'm still on the full throttle.
Nice rod.
It's a beautiful
very
rod.
Nice rod. But that new limited is very nice.
That would be that's my combo of choice. What I enjoy running and what I've caught all of my kingfish on. Yeah,
cool. What's this? Best combo? That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
There's that question again. Is a swivel clip okay or loop knot to stick bait? Is it really critical?
I reckon, like I mentioned before, man, run the swivel to the split ring, and then that way, because if you do a loop knot you can do, but obviously if you want to change your stick bait, your leader starts getting shorter.
Yeah.
So that's the safe way of doing it. Best bet.
Yeah.
What I'd recommend.
Sweet. What else have we got here? How much drag do you run for big kingfish?
Big kings.
Yeah. You mentioned 15 kilos before, right?
Yeah, 15 kilo, as long as it's smooth drag.
Yeah.
So as mentioned, it's kind of, from my experience, when you start going with the smaller fish, it's quite fun to go hard on them because they, and small fish being less than a meter. Over a meter, you can still skull drag them, you know what I mean? If you want to be, you can still pull them in. But as soon as you creep into that 24, 25 up, it's a whole different kettle of fish. As soon as you put a shit ton of drag and go hard on them, they like sweet. So generally smooth drag and not a lot, like about 10 kgs, 15 kilos. Yeah. Also depends where you're fishing. If you're on the boat, off the rocks, locked. Like there's no option about that. Yeah. Because on the rocks, obviously, if you go real light, it's just a different bloody ball game altogether. Yeah. So lock drag, so that's 22 kilos, and then you just sit back, lean. And this is another thing with the balanced combo. There's a lot of people that struggle holding on to heavy drag. If you've got a PE6 rod and it's nice and balanced PE6 line, it bends much better. So the rod takes all the grunt, whereas if you've got a PE6 setup, which is, a PE8 to PE10, it pulls on you, man. You can't hold on to it that well. So if you go for a PE6 rod, you can really use all your drag because it's just a suspension. It's just taking all that grunt, whereas I've seen, when you get pulled. And Rocks, lock drag, boat, you can take your time.
Yeah. Cool.
As much as you can handle, should we say, lock drag.
Yeah, pretty much already covered this one. Can you get kingfish on stick baits year round?
Yep, you definitely can. Much more difficult outside of that season. But if you do land it, will be a big boy. Yeah.
Yeah. We've covered this as well. I'll start again. Do poppers or stick baits attract more fish? I think you said poppers attract more fish.
Yeah,
stick
poppers
baits
attract
hook more fish.
Stick baits hook more fish. Yeah. So it's just the action. If you've got a nice action lure, you're all good.
Yeah, and then can you throw poppers on a stick bait rod and vice versa?
A little bit different, yeah, because it's going to be stiffer.
Yeah.
So a stiffer rod's good for popping, because if you try pop with a stick bait rod, a nice slack, relatively loose, it doesn't chug as good.
What else have we got? Jeremy Healy asked, best places to get onto your first topwater kingfish land-based.
Oh,
he wants your spots.
Wants our spots, Wants our spots.
There's some hot spots, right?
Yeah.
Coromandel, Northland.
Coromandel, up north. If you can actually get off to Great Barrier. Great Barrier is a good land-based spot if you want to go through there. Pretty much those three locations. And again,
if you use Tristan's tips for finding fish,
fish, as we said,
there's nice ledges.
Yeah.
Then you'll be pretty successful.
Pretty good. Yeah. Take notes.
Best thing to do is fish where the fish are, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. Fish where the fish are.
Yeah.
It's kind of
here's another one. Here's the last question. Cody Birch. Any topwater tips for the tropics? I've done about 100 casts and still no hookups.
Tropics is tough, man. Just depending. I've always said kingfish, GTs are like kingfish on crack.
Yeah.
So I fish for them in Mozambique and obviously in the islands. They kind of go into like a limp mode, like a shark. Same as kingfish. Good thing, and then we'll also try to help with that. There's certain times of the tide during the day, same as when you see a black tip reef shark over a reef, and it's not massacring any of the fish. It's because it's in limp mode. Same as GTs. GTs go from going apeshit to just casually cruising, but they're a little bit better. Like I mentioned, they kingfish on crack.
Yeah.
GTs, but I guess tropics, just try to figure out those tides. Maybe look at when you're fishing, what moon phase, because we all know, depending on where it is, like Roro, you've got the flying fish. They fish throughout the night, and they also go into little caves and sleep. So you could be casting. So just maybe take a little bit further, a little bit more note on when you're fishing. maybe change it up to the tides and the, or the moon.
And 100 casts is nothing, right? Get out there, do 1,000.
Yeah. When you cast from 6, 4 days straight until end of the day.
Yeah. And if you're visiting new places, you want to try and get some local knowledge off the locals, knowledge, right? Local charter boat fishermen.
100%. Likewise with anything, it's always good just to get that. But like I mentioned, my path, I didn't have any of that. Didn't have someone say, go try this spot. I literally just sat down, looked at people that did it consistently, and did a little bit more of the science thing. That's where myself and Steve would have endless conversations with, movement, fish. Yeah. Just if you understand your target species, doing endless research, then you can refine, get it a little bit narrowed down. Take notes.
Any more questions here? Oh, Kane asked trebles or singles and why. You pretty much covered that.
Singles.
Yeah, singles.
Terrible
every day.
Trebles.
Yeah. Have you found any stick baits that won't swim with a single on it?
Carpenters are notorious for being very difficult to swim on singles. Yeah. And then you just need to get that weight. So if there's a specific weight that they mention that it needs to run on, just get a little scale. Yeah. That's how I found those, the Kodoku. So 9.4 grams.
I had a Zeitz lure as well that didn't like swimming with
Zeitz are notorious. Zeitz actually got me making my own stick baits, which was good because through that journey I understood how stick baits swim and work. Zeitz, you either got it or you don't have it. Yeah. The one that, I struggle with Zeitz, but there's people that swim them really well, really good. It's just not matched to my...
I found you had to have enough weight in the keel to make
a lot of weight, yeah. So
a couple of extra split rings even to...
just put it up. And there's actually, you can get away with like tiny little clip-on sinkers that you can get. Yeah. That's a really good way if you want to run singles for difficult things like that. But adjust it accordingly. Yeah. You know what I mean? If you've got a good technique and you've got slack in the line, that will dip the lure down. Yeah. If you're just pulling, then I think that makes it much more difficult to swim a lure. So singles.
One of the things I see with people who are not very familiar with topwater fishing is they go out and they're pulling the lure too hard and they've almost got it skimming on the top of the surface on its side. Yeah. Is that just a matter of slowing it down and
slack? So you can pull really hard on a stick bait, make it go apeshit, leave a nice bubble trail, nice big S or rolling. But you want that slack because that slack pretty much allows it to dip down. As it dips, you can go ham on it. You can really whoop it. But if you don't have that slack and you're pulling, hold on, I'll try demonstrate it a little bit better actually, if I can. What's that? Can you see that?
Yeah, you can see
nice.
That.
So if you're doing this, right, when you with no slack, you can see that it's not really working that well. But if you allow slack, you can more aggressively kick and hit that lure. So that's a good way to demonstration there. If that makes all sense with the slack. There might be people that are like, what do you mean by that slack?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
When you start, you'll see.
Yeah. Sweet. Let me just make sure we have got through all of these questions. I think that's pretty much all of them. We've got any other? Yeah. I'm pretty sure we've got preparation. We've covered all this stuff, rigging everything up. How to find the fish. Any other tips for finding fish before we wrap it up? You sure you don't want to give away your spots? No? Okay.
Oh, it's pretty much everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. If you want spots, you're going to have to come see Tristan at the shop.
Yeah.
He might tell you where to go.
Might tell. Yeah.
It depends what sort of mood you get him in.
Yeah.
If he's had a coffee.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
But in saying that, man, generally most people are secretive with the spots. I reckon just learn how to find the fish, then you're going to become a dangerous angler.
Yeah. I think that it probably applies to all styles of fishing, right?
Yeah.
We're probably very spoilt with the Hauraki Gulf that you can pretty much go out there and find snapper and kahawai everywhere. Yeah. Whereas kingfish seem to be a little
bit pelagic.
Yeah.
But if I have to put it like with game fishing, say for example you went a month ago, and you took coordinates, and you're like, sweet, you looked at your SSTs and you dropped that, and then I go straight back to where you caught those fish, they're going to move.
Yeah.
They're going to move. So, if you've got this one spot that you really fixated on, you go and you fish it all the time, thinking because your mate caught, his PB king a year ago. It's much more valuable knowing how to find the fish. Yeah.
It's probably, if you're going to go out and do a full day fishing as well, you want to kind of use your methodology of the moons and the tides to go and target kingfish for a few hours. Yeah, and then do whatever else. Go catch a bin full of snapper.
And shift it around. And another good tip on top of all of this is fish alone. I see a lot of, go solo. Because there's generally pressure from your mates that come on. So you get on your boat, you jump, you're all excited, all hasty, and then you cruise out, and then you just stop wherever. The first place you had this reef in mind, cruise out to it, stop, and then you just start fishing. And then you're not, when you go alone, I don't know if you just get more in tune and you're thinking a little bit better. And if it's if it's quiet, you don't have to get 3 thumbs up from everyone saying, hey guys, we want to move. And it's like, oh no, I think it's going to happen here or this or that. So if you go fish alone, you get much better time to yourself to think, to get involved in it, to start, looking for those certain things, and you pay much more attention as well if you want to.
Sweet.
Do that. So that's another good tip. Fish
alone.
Fish alone, if you can.
Or
with these petrol prices,
find a crew that are top water addicts.
Top water addicts that are keen and
they've all
really
got the same game plan.
Share yourself, and get involved with like-minded people, which is really good as well.
Sweet. Okay, cool. I think we can pretty much wrap up episode number 2 there. Episode number two.
And another good thing, we can, you can always get in touch via Instagram if you've got any further questions.
We can. Tristan's own Instagram, I'll put it on the screen here somewhere, is @ChasingTidesNZ.
Yes.
Got to remember the NZ on the end.
I spend more time fishing than posting stuff. But we'll work on that. We'll get that
otherwise,
up to scratch.
You can get hold of Tristan in our store, Rosebank Road, Avondale. You can get hold of him via the phone. Phone number's on the website, marinedeals.co.nz. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure we're going to put more likes and subscribe buttons down here. If you do that, we can keep making more videos. We've got soft baiting coming up. We've got live baiting coming up. We've got slow jigging and workup fishing coming up.
We've got quite a few goodies.
We've got a few good ones lined up, so make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons, and we'll keep them coming.
Stay up to date.
Yep. Sweet. Get back to work.
Nice.
See